All right, with all due respect, welcome. The dust that is the 2022 politics is about to settle next week Tuesday as President-elect William Ruto takes oath of office. That will mark the end of this season's politics. The Supreme Court ruling brought an end to a long, protracted political season. A new season of governing is days away from beginning. There'll be a lot of insights and analysis about what comes next, what happened in this election, and with all due respect tonight, let's start there. And I have a panel of three eminent personalities to help us to do exactly that. Dr. Linda Musumba, who is the Director of Legal William Ruto Presidential Campaign Council. I also have on the panel Rachel Mulkali, National Convener, Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders Kenya, and Isabella Obara, Human Rights Lawyer. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us. It's telling that I only have ladies to the first analysis of what will be the President William Ruto's presidency. So perhaps it means something.
It does.
It does. Let's start with Linda. Honors is on you. You're part of this campaign, to oversee the legal strategy up to the Supreme Court. From where you sit, what do you think happens next?
Thank you, James, for having me. And what happens next is already outlined in the plan. I think you'll remember that before we went to elections, each of the parties that were going to participate in the elections had a manifesto. And for UDA, or the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, they had a manifesto, which was called the plan. And in that plan, there was an implementation framework that already laid out what is going to happen next. And this is number one, prioritization, i.e. there are so many competing things. Obviously, His Excellency William Ruto is going to get into an office and find things have been happening, things have been going on. So he and his team have to be able to sit down and reflect on, you're meeting a circumstance or a situation. There's what was hypothetical at the time, which is the plan, but now you must actually make it. You must make it real. So he's going to be looking at his plan together with what he finds on the ground and trying to prioritize what's more important. Of course, resources are not endless. And we know the situation that we're in this country in terms of the economy. So he's going to be scheduling things that can be achieved, high impact things that can be achieved within 6 months, those that can be achieved short term, medium term, and long term. So that is going to be the main agenda. Is
there, I listened to the President-elect and the Deputy President-elect yesterday in their speech. And obviously, other than, what was expected, him, obviously accepting the results of the Supreme Court, and, what has happened next with, him saying he hasn't spoken to, the outgoing president until Tuesday. What is sort of the political responsibility does Kenya Kwanza have, given that this election wasn't exactly a home run?
Okay, ordinarily, James and your viewers, the person who's in an office or who's in a house is the one who welcomes the person who's outside the door, isn't it? That generally is what's supposed to happen, and not the person who's outside welcoming himself or trying to negotiate his way into the house. Well, one would have hoped or wanted a situation where the one who's already in, the current holder of the office of president would be the one welcoming the incoming president. But nonetheless, it is what it is, and you make do with what you have. So that means that there's a lot of people that have to be spoken to speak to. Obviously, we're all well aware that there's a section of the country that did not vote for William Samoei Ruto, and he's actually acknowledged that, and he's sensitive to that. So I think one of the things that he's going to be needing to do is, of course, to bridge those gaps that there are between those who voted for him and did not vote for him, give assurances to people that he's not going to engage in any retribution, because that has been our history. I think he's breaking new ground by saying that he's welcoming, he's embracing. And so I think going forward, you work with what you have. You can't force people to be generous or to be amiable to you. You can't force people, to be willing to be your friend. But I think when he steps into the position of presidency, he has a responsibility, and he has taken it seriously, to embrace and to be able to bring people to the fold and work together. For instance, James, I'd be the first to say that there's some great ideas in the other manifestos. The manifestos of Azimio, the manifestos of Roots, and as well as Agano. I'm sure that WSR, in terms of being able to bring people together, will probably look at those manifestos. This is my thinking. pick out what is good from them. That's part of, I think, the political strategy going forward, to embrace those things that are good in the other manifestos, bring them on board, and then, you know, work with the plan and move forward.
Isabella, it's the same question. Elections are over. Supreme Court has spoken. It's a sort of contested election. What happens next?
Justice be our shield and defender. I wanted to start with that, especially because we will be doing a disservice to this discussion if we spoke about what is ahead, if we didn't acknowledge what happened in the past. It was so commendable in the way in which Kenyans conducted themselves during these particular elections. And I know we disappointed many. Obviously, even CSOs like us who had planned, you know, for the very worst and build scenarios that were, you know, not the best, yeah? And last time I was here, we were speaking about, you know, a situation where things were very, very bad. But I'm happy. We are even in studio today because the expectation was that after yesterday's Supreme Court, we wouldn't know exactly what was happening. Certainly, there was a prevailing air of uncertainty and anxiety. And the fact that we have even worked today and we're discussing here shows a beautiful picture in terms of where it is that we're headed. But obviously, human rights remains a standing agenda for each and every government, you know, whoever it is that is coming in, yeah? And so we are hoping that there are a few things that we'll see coming into play as soon as they get into office. Obviously, now that we're sure that we have someone in this particular space and we're simply waiting for a ceremony, I think it's all systems go. Obviously, we are looking at certain issues such as creating an enabling environment for civic society stakeholders and players like, you know, IMLU and others, you know, like one of the panelists here. In essence, it has been 12 years since, you know, the promulgation of the Constitution. However, we as Kenyans remain an obstructed civic space. So if we're looking at what it is that we have done and the gains that the civil society has been playing in this particular democratic space, then you expect that we should not be an obstructed space. We need to be an open space. So that is what we hope for going forward. We have other issues at the policy and legal level. For instance, there are certain international treaties that we expect that this particular government will deliver on. We are hoping that would operationalize some acts that have been, you know, laying somewhere, gathering dust. For instance, we have something like the National Coroner's Service Act. We have the Prevention of Torture Act. So there are a few things that we are looking forward to. And the beauty about the incoming government is that they already have things that are already set up for them. They simply need to get to work and actualize the same, yeah? So for instance, the acts, those are already set. And obviously the legal director would attest to that. We are also looking at issues around service delivery. I mean, we saw how the police conducted themselves in the elections. We are hoping that that can be enhanced in the next 100 days. Obviously, there were loopholes and gaps here and there, but I mean, strengthening of these things is not something that would be too hard, possibly even in the first 30 days. Let's not even speak about 100 days. But like I said when it started, justice be our shield and defender. And if so, and given the way everyone was very receptive of what it is that the Supreme Court said yesterday, then in the same vein, let's play along in terms of ensuring that there's access to justice, service delivery is done properly, policing is done, you know, in line with rule of law, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Rachel, the same question. You experience with the community, and you know, just taking from Isabella's point, perhaps it's an injustice to talk about what happens next without acknowledging what has happened in this election. Same question to you. What happens next? Tell us what happened in this election.
Interesting. For me, also one of the things that I like to point out is that we also appeal, like we have seen the bar of women rising up, seeing also 3 women running for top office. That's the deputy president, which is it's a congratulation. And we are looking forward to see a woman also vying as a president in future. And at the same time, we have seen also like also women, like the number has increased to, is it 7 governors? Which I'm like, it's good, but also it's not like what we want. If also you're talking about the Kenya Kwanza manifesto 50-50, I'm expecting also the same thing with the new government or the new regime when it comes in. It's not only just on cabinet, but also when it comes to PS, when it comes to ambassadorial position, parastatals or public office, that the actualization is going to be real. As in the way we say Vitwa ground is different. So I expect, if you're saying it's bottom-up approach, it's bottom-up approach in terms of inclusivity, and also at the same time in terms of ensuring that women are at the center of all this discussion. So it's full implementation of 2/3. So in 100 days, I'm expecting to see the 2/3 in actualization, saying the struggle that we have been pushing all this along, we are seeing the fruits. That's one. Secondly, when it comes to matters of also human rights, social justice, and women's rights, we are very hopeful, to be honest, as also community and grassroots community. I think also there's a lot of expectations based on the narrative that was from the ground, that we hope also the cost of living, the price of unga still, it's 200, it has not gone down. So we expect the price of unga also to, the cost of living to go down. And looking also at the manifesto, I was seeing also there is issue about also housing. We have seen even during this period that this is one of the biggest agendas. So also as people living in informal settlement, we don't expect to see with this new regime also forceful eviction or eviction. And the other thing that I expect to see with this regime is that the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, which is also a watchdog for the government in terms of monitoring human rights violation, they are well-resourced. And when I mean well-resourced, they're able to be resourced to ensure that they're able to push the agenda of human rights because they're speaking on behalf of the citizenry and behalf of the people. When it comes to health, I've seen also within the manifesto, and we have seen when they talk about the universal health care, which also happened to both of the manifesto, either it's Azimio, Agano, or Roots, where health is a priority and to most Kenyans. And we have seen that if it's a priority, also the concern of women, not only just on only maternal health, but also with focus, special focus on also sexual reproductive health and rights. If you're talking also about the family planning, what about the contraceptive? So I expect with this kind of regime that we're able to see that, but at the same time, not acknowledging that also the aspect of constitutionalism, it's well protected, defended, and promoted. That all these institutions, independent institutions, as we say, we follow the rule of the law. Let's ensure like it's protected, and Kenyans are able to continue protecting that right that we have as Kenyans.
Linda, this is the question about what has happened in this election in terms of how Kenyans view what has happened in the elections. You know, why essentially people voted say for Kenya Kwanza or they voted for Azimio. There's different reasons and they vary. The question of economic anxiety ranks top, but there's also the things that Kenya Kwanza promised, like you call the plan, right? And part of it, is how do you deal with all these, sort of the budgetary deficits that we have? How do we make sure that we put money in people's pockets? But also, how do you correct the mistakes of the past, right? This is a sort of a hodgepodge of problems. From where you sit, what is sort of the clarity, or when a whole team walks into office and finds all these things happening at the same time?
Okay, my response to that is this. First of all, before the development of the plan, I think you'll remember that the president-elect in the development of that plan had conversations with people, town hall conversations, met with people at grassroots level from different parts of the country. And that is where the plan came from. It's not something that was from utopia or something that is, that was done in boardrooms. This means that everything contained within the plan is something that is of value to different people in different spaces and so forth and so on. And of course, that the key agenda, of course, when he steps into office, I think he has already indicated that, is to bring down the cost of living, is to be able to expand the tax base, is to be able to deal with food insecurity. So obviously, when he sits down with his team to be able to think about, what is the most urgent thing to do and look at the in-tray and so forth and so on, there's still more work to be done. Because as I said, there is what you talk about before you get elected. Now he is going to be sworn in next week, and he must now begin to engage and put together a team. Of course, statecraft is important. He must, of course, develop the model, government, the government institutions as he wishes to execute through. Because remember, we have got a maximum of, is it 21 or 22 ministries? Is he going to choose 15? Is he going to choose 21? There's principal secretaries who are supposed to assist these people. So he has to choose the right people, arrange government, the architecture of government in the right way, to be able to deliver those things that he has indicated are core, and of course which respond to the plan. It is very important to plan, because things don't go wrong, they start wrong. So he has to start, in my view, on the right footing, with enough information based on whether it is studies, research, already existing research. I think the plan, when you look at the plan, you see it makes reference to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, data and so forth and so on. So it is to sit down and intelligently plan with people so that you start off on a good footing. When you are applying, for example, a measure or a solution to something, it's not just based on, oh, I think people are hungry, so let's give them cake. No, it is people are hungry. What is causing them to be hungry? What is the quickest way to make sure that they're not hungry, but they're still healthy? Because you can't just eat carbohydrates. You have to eat a mix of this, that, and the other. What are the dietary needs of children, elderly people? So I'm saying there has to be intelligent thought, and I'm certain that he has a team that has been thinking about these things, and which of course is going to now get to the real business once he steps into office.
Isabella, you spoke about obstructed civic space,
but
then there's other things, just the same way. Economic anxieties, we're not doing well, with other things. There's been a lot of mistakes in the past. So how do you rank these issues, essentially?
I wouldn't rank them. Ranking them at this point would be a bit premature, but I'd talk about righting the mistakes from the past. And I'm just hearing what Dr. is saying here, and I'm thinking that she is, in essence, saying that beneficiaries like, the regular Mwananchi or Wanjiku will be included in the next government in terms of ensuring that what it is that they are given or what they get is, in essence, what they need. However, just to circle back to your question, righting the mistakes of the past. There's a beautiful, beautiful document that was shared by the then President Uhuru Kenyatta on 13th of May, I think 2013. This was the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission report. And from this particular report, if anyone in the incoming government would simply sit down, they'd have literally every other targeted community or group. They'd have reparations clearly set out for them. They'd have clear-cut recommendations down to a T in terms of timelines. So if we're looking at ensuring that people who live in Kenya, dead or alive at the moment, are either taken care of or addressed in terms of any violation that was there, gross human rights violation, as well as historical injustices, they have it in this particular report. They can start from there. And this won't take long, especially because I know that there are budgetary allocations to look at possibly people who are tortured, maybe people who suffered serious and critical land injustices, persons who underwent untold, or rather things that we can't even speak about in terms of sexual and gender-based violence, but we already have even non-monetary, form of reparations spelled out. For instance, there are people who suffered in excess in terms of torture and being criminalized wrongfully. So this particular report talks about them being expunged in terms of those criminal records that are there against them, being taken back to the places where they lived, in essence, getting public apologies. So righting these mistakes would not be something very, very hard for the incoming government.
Why hasn't it happened?
Well, Daktari would be able to answer that, given that they need to look at what happened in the past and what is coming. But you see, I am simply giving you what it is. We already have a template to refer to.
Right.
Smart.
Yes.
We already have it. So if we're looking at things that go as far back as 2007, they already know what it is that they're supposed to do. So this particular coming government, in terms of writing, they already have that. Let me give you another example. We have the Victim Protection Trust Fund. That's already, we have regulations. Beautiful regulations. It's simply to implement, make them live. We have the Victim Protection Board that sits and doesn't have much. Why not resource them? Something Mikali spoke about here, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, resource them. We already have institutions and bodies that are ready to serve, specifically in the space of human rights, that don't have much. Why not even enhance, the collaborative chemistry between them and CSOs like ourselves to ensure that we give strategic interventions in terms of programs, capacity build people. I mean, there's so much to do. We have literally everything set out for us. It's all systems go for you, Dr. Really, it is.
Rachel, same question.
Interesting.
You're laughing. We're giving Dr. ideas here. Yes.
Interesting, yeah? now back to my usual way of organizing. For me, one thing also we need to be clear is that Kenyans, we have proven that we know also what we want and we know what we don't want. And for me, saying this is that one of the biggest things that I've seen this time, there was no like the way people say it's suity. People are very clear, this is a candidate I want, either based on ideology or not. But something also we can't ignore is also the high rates of domestic violence. We have seen it increasing. Now, if you look in terms of before and also what can you inherit also as a government, where we saw during the Generation Equality Forum, also the outgoing president, he has not outgone, but now we have a new elected president, around commitment on ending gender-based violence. We have seen government committing a lot of money and procedures to ensure they are in place to protect women from violence and girls. So for me, also what I'm expecting is that there will be a political will in all the counties and also national-wide to ensure women are protected from violence. And we have seen these cases such that they are not reducing. And this also goes also to political position. And the reason of me raising this one is also around the violence that we have seen targeting women political candidates. And for women political candidates is also in line that the faces that have come back, they're not the new faces in the game. The only people who have new faces in the game is, let's say, Tabitha, who is from the private sector, and is it Toto from
Bomet.
Is it Bomet?
Yes, Bomet.
These are the new ones, but the previous, like Honorable Sapasaris, Mili, the people have been there before. But also we have seen a new different trend that where we need also to make the political space enabling for women, that still there's patriarchy that exists in political spaces. Still there's patriarchy also. I expect Daktari. Also we're seeing on your side, I was expecting two-thirds on the top position. Where we
it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened on the top position. So expect when you say we'll get that two-thirds, like the way here we are. Now we have started, nation has started implementing the gender agenda. So I'm expecting that we're able to open up these spaces, because also Waiguru is a good case study. She started from appointment and now she's elected post as a governor. Yeah. So how do we make these spaces enabling for women, young women, not only just women. When I mean young women also, it means youth. But at the same time, the other thing that I felt it shifted is also around misinformation and disinformation. Everybody became IBC during the election period. Everybody had their own way of also counting the votes. Everybody became Chebukati in their own rights. But also how, as a country, around right of information, which I've seen with the new regime, they are clear in terms of saying that is something they want to invest also on ICT. How is it around data privacy, data protection? How do we also able to see, even as a public, that you don't give wrong information, but at the same time, access to information? Are we going to be in a country that civic space, the way we are saying, is going to be curtailed? Are we going to be in a space that we ensure that this organizing and mobilizing is going to continue? But the other thing also I need to acknowledge is that we are willing to work with this new regime, but also critique it. And also I can quote the current president during the presidential debate. When he said, and he quoted, was it Muite, that he was told for you to be, also as much as you're in government, for you also to make government accountable, you need to critique it. So also as activists, as human rights defenders, as feminists, if this government will not work in terms of upholding the rule of the law and respecting human rights or women's rights, we'll hold it into account. We'll resist and hold it into account.
Resist and hold it into account. There's this obvious thing that no one wants to speak about, which is sort of like a lack of opposition. That has just happened, but no one wants to speak about it. I see you're smiling, Dr. But this is a big problem. It's a real problem, essentially, because you're now in government, or your side is in government. You sort of have like the biggest responsibility to make sure that you might not want the opposition, but it is needed. It is important for democracy.
I think, James, clearly from what, again, His Excellency William Ruto has said, that he's not going to get into a handshake with any of the parties, and that he values and respects the opposition as a very, very integral element of a democracy, because it is very fundamental that a government is put to check.
How does that work in practical terms? That's how you envision it.
Yeah, in practical terms, it means that in Parliament, we need to have an opposing force to those members of Parliament who come from the ruling, political party. It's very, very important that you have people giving alternative voice, alternative space. It is through these spaces that the criticism that my sisters are talking about will be able to percolate or permeate. It is through these spaces that, you know, they say, you know, power, is it power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely?
Yes.
You know, that saying. So it's a very important that as human beings are put in check, so that even our president, our deputy president, our members of parliament, the heads of the executive, the entire structure, even in your own house, James, perhaps if you're not put to check, you know, by the members of your family who are there, you're probably going to, you know, become quite you know, quite bloated and make mistakes. So for me, it is to be able to have an active and opposing force within parliament, but also within the executive, to have institutions, for example, like the ombudsman, to be able to make it possible
to resource them correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah, but how will that happen when, you know, everyone just keeps on checking in and saying, you know, we have now joined Kenya Kwanza and, you know, we like this idea, or we like the plan?
No, people like the plan, that's for sure, because I think it makes sense. It makes sense. But I also see on social media people who also strongly, you know, strong Azumio supporters who are saying they're not, you know, boarding in the sense that they want to remain an active and opposing force. And don't forget, by the way, social media for us in this country is a very, very strong force for being able to voice dissent and be able to speak your mind. So my anticipation and my expectation is that the airwaves will continue to be free. Of course, the digital superhighway is one of the elements that has been talked about as being, it's going to be expanded. And so I expect more and more people to get into those spaces, Twitter, Facebook, name it, the WhatsApp groups. And I'm sure that our president is also a part of this digital superhighway, and he also reads tweets, and he also, I'm sure, has got a Facebook, you know, presence, even if not, you know, even if it's through other people or whatever. But I'm sure that he's sensitive and alive to those things. So yeah, Parliament and all other spaces. And also remember, sorry, yeah, James, if I may, he has also said that people will not be victimized. This is to say that people who opposed him previously will have the opportunity, I mean, be free. Do not be afraid, walk free. This is to say that even within the executive, in the offices that are going to be there, the expectation will be that, you know, workers will also be able to, you know, tell those who are their superiors those things that they think are alternative.
Well,
lack of opposition.
For me, you already have the answer, especially because I started with talking about a kind and enabling environment for CSOs. And civil society organizations, in their own right, have always been the opposition, in one way or another. You look at how it is that they talk about issues that are affecting the people, how they bring forth things that are on the ground that may not be seen at that particular level, how they have interacted with the state, donor agencies, you know, and the communities themselves, how they interact at the policy-making level, how they give memorandas, how they support initiatives. So for me, in that space, civil society remains a formidable opposition, yeah, and that may not cut across so many other things in terms of the structural framework that we have, but in essence, they do remain, you know, an opposition, and they are possibly the most reliable watchdog, if you ask me, in essence, because they do not take instructions from any government or whoever. For them, they look at what it is that they want to take care of, they have their mandates, and they have their policies in place. So if you're a non-governmental organization, obviously at this point, it is, you look at what it is that you want to work on, what you want to tackle, find who it is maybe leading the team or whoever is in charge in this coming government and tackle it with them. For instance, if you are a person like ourselves who work around issues of security and right to life, we need to get a hold of the legal officer in the Human Rights Committee or the Security Committee and work with them, because there are nitty-gritties that even this particular opposition sometimes misses that CSOs will capture, especially because we enjoy the leverage or the spaces, the small spaces that we get. And you can hear Mwikali speaking about even women and everything. Civil societies have moved from the space where they simply talk about money and budgets and giving things for free. They're now undertaking baseline surveys that will tell you smart today that out of 10 women, 5 said this and 2 dissented in this space and 3 said this and this. So we're not just telling you, oh, it's 10 women and we leave it at that. So we'll give you specific things, needs, and where it is that we're headed. Beautifully for us is that we also come with budgetary allocations. So, I mean, what other formidable opposition? For us, we're not worried. We are here to do what it is that we do, and obviously, long live CSOs. Thank you.
Mwikali, lack of opposition, same question, and this sort of bad manners where every politician who, you know, who's won decides that they want to join the winning team, right? And I mean, there's no problem joining the winning team, but this is essentially, doesn't, bode well with saying that, I had an idea and I went to the people and they didn't accept it. So it's fine, I'll stay on this side of the aisle and I'll let you implement your idea.
As the show is called, With All the Due Respect. So with all the due respect of religion, I think for me, religion also should start acting as that part of opposition. And for me, it's one, we have seen also religion card playing a critical role during this election, where we expect, and ideally if you look from the past, that religion is supposed to bring people together and not divide people. But we have seen this election, it has been more of certain religious leaders leaning to one side and not one side. So expect the same way they tell us in Swahili, and I use Swahili also for my sake of my people who can't hear English. Mwenyezi Mungu ndo anachagua kiongozi. So if they are the same one who will tell us or use religion to blackmail us and brainwash us a bit, it's the same people now when things or bad things are happening, I'm expecting them to call out oppression. Religious leaders. And this one also will need as a public also, whichever church you go, also Jesus was an activist. You need to be asking this kind of question also to your religious leader.
Was a human rights defender?
Yeah, human rights defender. That's, yes, very good. So that's one. But also in terms of the political sides, I'm expecting that it's worrying. To be honest, I'll not agree also with Daktari. It's a worrying trend seeing also people being, I don't know if it's being bought, like a bag going to the other side or not this side. It's important also for a country also to have like a clear, and lacking of a better word, a decent opposition where we're also able to hold the regime into accountable, but at the same time the public. For me, this one I'll look at it at the public. For us, why are we all of us defenders or human rights defenders? Is because you have seen the kind of human rights violation happening in the country and you decided to speak out. The same way we're speaking out, people also saying this has happened, people counting or not counting. I expect Kenyan citizens who are watching, let's take our responsibility of when things go wrong, let's hold all the leaders into account. When a Mheshimiwa who was coming to your community asking for votes, promising you, saying water is luxury, which should not be a luxury, should be a right, we need to be asking them, in terms of your manifesto, you had promised you're going to do this and this, why are you not doing it? But also should encourage active citizenship. And active citizenship comes also with organizing communities. And that's why the beauty with social movements, the beauty of organizing ground and community is that you're able to work as a community and say, you promised us this, why didn't you deliver? So as a Kenyan citizen, we should not wait only just on Twitter, on Facebook, and being active online, which is important. It's a new trend nowadays. But also should be cognizant also, are we supporting also initiative within our own local communities? The same way we are giving the 10% to pastors and the church, are we giving a 10% to community initiative that are also risking and putting their life online on our behalf? But at the same time, if you talk about opposition, also, with whichever side, whether it's now the opposition or the regime, I think also that also comes back to also people understanding what they need to do. If it's, for example, the county assembly of Nairobi, the power lies now in county government. Community should be involved in public participation to ensure that before projects are proposed, they need to be involved and design the kind of projects they want and how they need it to be done, not the way things have been that people decide on your behalf. And when you say also in terms of opposition, it's also a matter of ensuring that even the media, the role the media also play in ensuring that if things are not going the right way, even like with this discussion, and I like and big up Smart, even the name with all the due respect, because also we need to be very careful, as much as Daktari is saying, we have been given permission, quote unquote permission. You can talk not on WhatsApp and not go to Signal, all these things. Sometimes you have to be very careful to what intention these things are said. How would you know if Signal exists if you don't know why people go to Signal?
Right.
How would you know? How would you know people go to either, they put VPN in their phones without saying where they are? So also for me, I'm a bit skeptical, when such also a presidency where we know so in most government try to curtail the public, government try to silence people when they start speaking truth to power, but they are clear saying, and also we know now the in mining now is online and IT. So tunaongoja kama ni kusema na kutenda ama ini story view sasa.
There's an urgent question from Ole Naitawang, and he says, kindly ask Dr. Musumba what happens to the CAS positions that the courts declared unconstitutional. Will she advise William Ruto to obey this and other court rulings by scrapping these posts?
That's a good question from your viewer there. For me, of course, I haven't spoken to His Excellency to be able to ask him directly what he'll do, but I'm certain about something. He has said he's going to uphold the rule of law. And the rule of law requires that those things that are constitutional are done and those that are not done. The CAS position was ruled unconstitutional by the courts, and therefore my expectation is that when you say you're going to obey or respect the rule of law, my expectation is that you're going to do exactly what your viewer there is
literally
saying.
the first thing he has to do.
Yes. It's one of the things I think that's in the in-tray. And, you know, I think, you can see from his posture, he's not afraid to do those things that need to be done. And I think that's very, very important in leadership. So my expectation is that he's going to be able to address this issue of the CAS, and where it's demanded that action is taken, I'm sure that it's going to be taken. And maybe, James, I could just say one thing to my sisters who've talked about the CSOs. For me, I know that we're not discussing the Supreme Court decision here, or that's not the agenda or the topic of today, but let me say that one of the things that I really hoped for, even as we went through that process, I was really looking for civil society organizations that see the truth in the Maina Kiai case, saying that the elections end at the polling station, also coming on board to be able to say they want to state or make a position, for that position, because you see that is what we presented before the courts, and the courts found on all counts. You're
disappointed that didn't happen?
Yes, I would have wanted to see civil society organizations coming in to support and defend that position. Yeah. So it is not to take a bob or a jibe at my sisters, but it's to say, yes, I mean, when government is doing, when people are doing the right thing, why are you should step up and step in. I hope going forward, that where good is being done, that also civil society organizations are also going to say, yes, you're doing well and we support that. Where it's not good, then of course, as they've said, they really have to play the role of being able to stand in the gap for everybody else.
Just before we go past that,
I also want to comment on that after
before the swing. Yes,
Smart.
Please.
CSOs remain apolitical, always will be. And in this particular petition, I know it's not our core discussion, but you'll notice that one of the amicus curiae was also a CSO. So in essence, for us, we remain firm in terms of saying that we will advise where we need to, but we always and will remain apolitical. Right? It's not a matter of right or wrong. We are not in the business of supporting whoever it is that but we guide.
You take cognizance of what the is saying.
I take cognizance, and that's why I am clarifying this, so that we do not go confused, because CSOs do not work. We try to make sure that that particular line between politics and civil society spaces remains clear. Once we blight, we lose it. So, and that's why we were admitted as amicus curiae, not respondents or petitioners or whatever. Ours was to guide and direct the court in terms of our expertise and what it is that we are bringing. Apolitical we remain, not right, not wrong, but we guide and we at least steer.
Okay. I think for me, I'll go with the movement mindset, and I tend to disagree with you, Dr. In terms of when you say civil, what does it mean? Even you and I, when you come together, we can be that civil society. And we had both sides where people were from the, let's say, Kenya Kwanza, who disagreed, who agreed. We had people also from Azimio who agreed and disagreed. I think if as a country we move from this mind, if we want to see civil society in terms of big organization or big names coming in front, we lose also that part of citizen organizing and what does civil mean. Because if you ask me about civil society, I think we have seen, the way I was saying, religious leaders who fall under civil society, who was also on the other side, or on this other side and taking a political. So, and also we have seen even around when you say you're disappointed, I think for me it will be very problematic, because the church also, we have seen it, they have been primary stakeholder in Kenya Kwanza campaign, and they're also part of civil society.
All right. With all due respect, we're taking a short break. Rachel Bukali, Isabella Obara, and Dr. Ida Musumba. Yes, that swing has landed. We'll come back with plenty more on the other side of the break. Don't go too far.
Dhima ya uongozi ni kubwa mno.
Ni ule ambao nasema upuzi wa kisiasa.
Si gavana wangu, nilisema niliibiwa kura.
Kuna wale wanaoibeba barabara.
Nani angefikiri kwamba Uhuru wangeungana na Ruto?
Kuna watu huko mabroka huko nje makateli.
Lakini kuna wale ambao mzigo kwa hakika unawalemea kabisa.
Hii ni mtu wa mtatu.
Kenya waulize maswali mengine.
Kila siku ya Jumatatu jioni tunawaweka kigodani viongozi wako.
Hapo tuko jipe kati ya alama 10.
Swali hili ni swali la utata sana.
Watu wanaanguka kwa sababu ya maswali.
Na mwisho wa kuisha basi, lengo na shabaha ni kuhakikisha tunashajiisha uwazi na uwajibikaji katika safu zote za uongozi humu nchini.
Dave, this line is not going down and you're burning up. But I'll sort you out, my friend. See that barrier? Go for it. Yeah.
Bing bang bing, bam bam.
The Nairobi Hospital Accident and Emergency Center is manned by well-trained doctors and emergency nurses who are focused at saving lives. With a network of labs, you're guaranteed of accurate medical test results. The Nairobi Hospital is a center of renal excellence, providing cutting-edge technology with over 10 dialysis machines.
We're meeting in 15 minutes for the big announcement. Don't be late.
You're right.
I'm extremely proud of you.
I'm sorry, no more weddings for today. You can book for another day.
I've waited for so long to marry this man. And waiting one more day is just too unbearable.
Yaani wananifanya mjinga. Umenifanya mimi mwonika mjinga.
African Institute of Research and Development Studies offers you an opportunity to start your career journey with us. Admission for September-October 2022 intakes is ongoing in all our campuses in Kericho, Nakuru, Lodwar, Eldoret, Kisumu, and Bungoma.
All right, with all due respect, welcome back. This program tries to make sense of what's happening in our life, in our space, in politics, in business, whatever that is taking us. Right now, we are looking on Tuesday for the inauguration of President-elect William Ruto to start off the William Ruto years of government for the next 5 years. I do have Dr. Lena Musumba, I do have Isabel Obara, and Rachel McCallie. Ladies, when we took the break, there was a question on the perceived sort of taking sides of the CSOs. It's been defended, not sure it's been defended adequately, but to sort of piggyback on that and being brought back to the question of there's still people who, Dr. Linda, who feel that they supported one side and the Supreme Court decision hasn't really settled. How do you advise, you know, that side? I mean, obviously for a celebration, but the other side, it's not.
I think for me, one of the things that has been very interesting in these elections, James, is that we've had family, within the family, people supporting different entities. In my own family, there have been people who support this, presidential candidate or that presidential candidate. So even as I am happy about, the results for Kenya Kwanza, I'm also cognizant that my family member is also grieving because of, it didn't happen for them as they expected. So it starts from the family level, then we go outwards. And obviously, you cannot deny those who have won and worked for it, you know, the joy that they experience now in the celebrations, but also commiserations for those who did not.
How do you not over-celebrate? I think that's the question.
How do you not over-celebrate?
Yes, like celebrate, how do you not over-celebrate?
But again, also, I mean, for those who won, allow them also that space, you know, to be able to celebrate, you know, but also, you know, coming down or back to earth, even as people celebrate, remember, everywhere around the country, you don't know, let me say that, for example, in the counties or wherever you are, you celebrate, but then you come down to earth where you now contend with the things that affect you at your local level and local space, and where you hope, just like those, like everybody else, that the government of William Samoei Ruto will reach you where you are. And yesterday's, you know, winners are perhaps today's losers. So it's a game that keeps rolling and that we keep managing our. So I think what I saw, at least on social media as time went by, people began to build acceptance and say, we've been here before, maybe it's happened again, or others who felt that last time we were not lucky, but this time we are. So I think personally, when I look at, you know, the terrain, I feel that we have really come a long way as a country. And I'm really happy to see people take things in their stride. I did see some people say on social media that they were going to tear up their, you know, their voters, you know.
Those who were disappointed by these results.
Yes, those who are disappointed. But I would say, you know, an election, who knows who will come in and who will not come in. Maybe your candidate will come in next time. Why will you do that? So I would suggest that we take things in stride. Just like Mandago said, just, you know, let it be at the chest level, breathe it out or breathe it in and relax. And more importantly, I think it is to hold your MCA to account, hold your member of parliament, your women rep, you know, all these people at your ground level. Is the important thing is to hold them to account, because at the end of the day, William Samoei Ruto is now the president of everybody, whether they voted him in or not. So his promise, his plans become the plans of everybody now. So I think I suggest that, you know, after you have maybe gone out and screamed loud, you know, in the yard out there, come back in and then get down to the business of looking at what your MCA is doing.
Rachel, not to say, you know, you're not celebrating, but what is the advice of, you know, those who are feeling disappointed with this election? Those who are saying, well, democracy doesn't matter anymore, politics makes no sense anymore. How do you, you know, help these people not to overcry? If there's anything like that.
No, I think one is to acknowledge that when you have a loss, whether it's also an intimate partner or something you believe in, it's like, for example, if someone also threatens your freedom, you'll not be okay. It will take some time even with the trauma and the healing process, and you need to be supported to ensure so there's that community care. But at the same time, for me, when you talk about democracy, and I think next week is Democracy Week, next week, which also we are holding a space together with our partner at Forum Civ to be able to understand what has it meant for our country. To be honest, with this process, being also a millennial in this regime or this country, I feel there are parts where we need also to improve moving forward, where we saw from party levels where democracy was negotiated. What does it mean when people negotiate, when you're being told your vote is your right, and then you go and cast your vote, which is your right, and then it's taken away from you? What does it mean? And when I mean taken away from you, it's either few individuals sitting and agreeing. I'm not talking about the presidency. I'm trying to bring it from a grassroots level where we saw parties, they messed up the public. They messed up even young people like myself in terms of, we have been living in this space that is as oppression. Getting a job is a problem. Where you come from, class issue is a problem. Like even eating a meal, it's a problem. And now you're being told that go and vote there and then you'll change your life, and then you go and you wake up very early. You don't go to your kibarua, to your casual job. You're like, I need change, I need freedom, and then it's taken away from you. So I feel moving forward as a country, what we need to be cognizant is that election does not end with voting. In fact, now even politics are just started. And life has started in terms of also how does development work. At the same time, for those that have not won, how do we ensure that we are able to support them to understand that we don't give up in the next election? Because also that's my worry, that many people, in terms of also voter apathy, many people are feeling that in a story, we figure this story and then there are few people who decide. For me, also the other thing I'll be able to say, and also being a human rights defender and the work we do as human rights defender, we have followed what the court has said as a country, whether it's on whichever side, as an individual you are part of. Can it also be, and also quoting the elect president, from the same presidential debate, where he said if they get into power, the first thing they will do is ensure also Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity is being followed. And following it is going to the rule of the law. So I'm looking forward to see also the people who have had corruption issues, have had issues to do with human rights violation, they are held into account. And when I mean about integrity, it's not just only about the man integrity, but also men who have abused women or raped women who are in power position are able to be held into account. So also that comes back to also as a country, what we need to localize is ensuring that we start having these discussions. That one of the things is, and this is the thing also for me also, as Mwikali, now I'll talk as Mwikali, I really felt disappointed a bit. I'm against violence, also as a human being. Nobody can thrive in violence, and violence is against human rights. But I felt there were moments also, the justice word was so curtailed with lukewarm peace. I'll say lukewarm peace. If you're feeling that people are not hearing me, and you want to say, I'm being oppressed, I want to be felt for justice, which now in line with democracy. If you started asking those questions, I could monitor it on social media and different spaces. People will tell you you want people to fight. So also that's right to also...
There's no space for expression. Raw emotional expression.
Yeah, even emotional expression. So also this is something that as a country, we need to bring back, that people are able to say how they feel it and how they feel disappointed without fighting. We need to create that culture that, Smart, I'm not agreeing with you, I'm feeling this, and also you should listen to me. And not when I say it, you use it against me and make me look the bad person.
Smart, before we depart from this particular discussion on celebrations or mourning, let me add a little wrinkle to it. So you paint a picture of mourning or celebration, but you don't see it at that top level. Yesterday, all we saw was statements and tweets. However, on 15th, we had one man who was stabbed to death in Kibra.
Yes.
Yeah, because they were celebrating a win, and someone didn't like that. And this is now, what we normally say is, you know, a law enforcement officer or a police officer. No, this was civilian to civilian. That was celebration. Why did we have to kill each other? Yeah. Somewhere in Kisumu, when these particular results were announced, obviously for the first time, someone was shot and injured badly. They're still lying at a hospital somewhere in Kisumu. This is a young man, a 19-year-old man. Why? Because for them, they felt aggrieved by that decision. So this is the reality of either celebrating or being sad or mourning. And when you look at it at the top level, they simply write statements, you know, well written and signed and sent out. We don't see them going out to fight or going to protest or going to hit each other. Somewhere down along Juja Road, we saw some form of hooliganism that killed someone. Yeah. So one lady was left dead and the husband was badly injured, still lying in hospital today. We cycle back to the nomination period. We had 2 people shot badly in Lakisama. So when you're celebrating or when you're mourning, please keep in mind that it is between you and your brother. It is not at that top political class. So whatever it is that you do between now and even when we are swearing in this particular government or we are moving forward, find ways that do not harm your neighbor, because it gets as real as death, maiming, and even sometimes enforced disappearances. So I think I wanted to say that in terms of celebration or mourning or being very upset. And obviously, we've seen reckless comments on social media. We are the ones who talk about freedom of expression and things like that. But some of these comments, when they are sent out on WhatsApp, you see the way they forward them, and those are the things that fuel now the people who do not have the range or the capacity to understand that this is simply a tweet. They will go out there and hit someone, you know. So as we do what it is that we're doing between now and then, and obviously for the next 5 years, I think it's you are your brother's keeper. At the top level, they'll find a way of you know, civilly looking at issues. But for you, take care of yourself.
Okay, I want to get some final thoughts and ask this, you know, from Linda, then go forward. The place of women in the next 5 years. Kenya Kwanza has had very specific proposals put forward for not only appointive positions and how to correct this 2/3 gender rule that we've been unable to, right? I want you make that as your final comment. What's the space and place of women?
I think you've already said it, James, which is that women will occupy a very central role in a Kenya Kwanza government, starting with, of course, the 50-50 cabinet slots, which we are waiting to see come to pass, and I'm sure that that will be implemented. But also, I can't remember which of my sisters said, not just at the cabinet level, but something that should reverberate all the way to, the ground level, so that
appointments.
Yes, whether it's in appointments, yes, in appointments, of course, going all the way to the ground level. I expect to see this also in county governments, not just only in the national government. I think you remember when the Women's Charter was signed, there were quite a number of commitments that were made towards addressing issues of women. One of them, of course, is the gender-based violence, which, of course, is something that is absolutely unacceptable, and something which, of course, was given quite the attention with respect to interventions that are expected to be seen in a Kenya Kwanza government that will protect women right from the home to the police stations to all these places.
Okay.
Then, of course, I think I need to mention that empowerment, economic empowerment of women, that's also an area that was spoken of. It's very important that me at my own household level, that I'm economically empowered to be able to make decisions and I'm able to do things. So I'm expecting to see a lot of movement in the micro and small and medium enterprise sector, incentives that are going to be able to help women stand on their own.
Okay. Now, let's finish where we should, and that is on the profiles of the people that have made it and be making laws for you in Parliament and running the systems for the next 5 years. And we stick with two this evening. Nakuru Town West MP Samuel Arama, the gentleman there on your screens now, is Jubilee, elected by Jubilee, and has been re-elected for a record three times, if you like. His story is full of colorful details. First, in June 2022, Mr. Arama was committed to a 6-month prison term or a fine after being found guilty of conspiring to grab a piece of land. The lawmaker paid the fine, of course. The charge for this crime is called attempted fraud. Mr. Arama and 4 others were found guilty of conspiracy to defraud Mr. Ahmed Muhammad of the plot by faking land registration documents. You heard that right. Chief Magistrate Victor Wakumile also sentenced 3 former Nakuru land officers in the same case. The 3 are John Moura, Daniel Nyantika, and Charles Birundi, were also given an optional fine, and they paid. Their mitigation: the suspects had pleaded with the court to consider non-custodial sentences. This is what the good MP told the court when he's asking for leniency. He says, "I am an upright model citizen who has been elected to high office," said Mr. Arama. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, had urged a 3 High Court judge bench to permanently bar the legislator from holding public office following the conviction and sentence. The EACC appealed to Justices David Majanja, Murungi Thande, and Enoch Chacha Mwita to bar Mr. Arama from presenting himself for election. This is what the EACC said: Mr. Arama has been convicted in a 60 million land fraud case and should not be allowed to contest any elective seat. The EACC urged the 3-judge bench. The IBC gave Mr. Arama clearance in spite of the protestation by EACC and the courts. And guess what? The voters gave the final approval. His constituents describe him as a silent, rough-edged, but a very philanthropic lawmaker. That's for you. But let's go to the other politician before we leave, and that's in Tana River County. The new senator there is one Danson Mungatana. This is his face, you've forgotten him. He was formerly Garsen MP and has been in political wilderness for a while. Mr. Mungatana is not a stranger to corridors of courts, of course. Let me bring you up to speed with what he's been up to lately. Mr. Mungatana was in 2019 charged alongside others with conspiracy to commit an economic crime involving electronic money transfer from the Kilifi devolved government. Last year, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission again arrested and arraigned him over the alleged theft of 51.5 million shillings from Kilifi County coffers. At the time, the former MP, with 6 others, were accused of using a company belonging to another businesswoman as a conduit to illegally receive 9.1 million from the devolved unit. According to EACC, Mungatana and his co-accused forged local purchase orders, popularly known as LPOs, belonging to the Kilifi County government to ask for payments. The case has not been settled to date. But In 2020, the former Garsed MP again was implicated in a 70 million fake military food supply tender. He was arraigned alongside businessman Paul Collins Waweru for forgery, obtaining money by false pretense, and unlawfully making documents. The trial is ongoing in Nairobi. Police say a businesswoman by the name Evelyn Joki had been approached by a Mr. Collins Paul Waweru, who claimed he could help her secure a 70 million tender from the military. To help the deal go through, Mr. Waweru introduced Ms. Joki to Mr. Mungatana, our senator, who, according to police, presented himself as a senior official at the Department of Defense, DoD. Who knew which buttons to press, of course, he said. His constituents praise him for his eloquence and colorful life. He'll be shuttling between courts as he represents the great people of Kenya and making great laws for our integrity. With all due respect.